Hi, I'm Dave. I think most people now know the media went mad when Elon decided to get rid of 10% of Tesla's workforce. Apparently, behind the scenes, he was asking for 20%. And people talked him down. No, you can't get away with that many. You need to restrict it to 10%. So things have settled down a little bit. Some of those ones he's laid off, he's brought back. There's some departments that are still expanding. The energy department, the Cybertruck production line, and the lorry. They're all growing at the moment and taking on staff. And China's doing very well, so they're taking on staff there. So it's a limited thing. But just a question, is Elon already building their replacements? Well, Dave Takes It On has a look at what might be going on behind the scene. Well, obviously at this stage we're talking about, and Volkswagen and Hyundai have all said they are working very actively to make robots. And they have one purpose only, that is to cut the manufacturing costs. Now, I gave an example recently about Fiat wanting to make a vehicle, and they could make it in Italy in the factories, which are heavily unionised, or they could make it in, I think it's Poland, where there were no unions or anything, and labour costs are very much lower, or Slovakia. Not sure which, but the principle's to say it was a cheap labour place. And they said that moving the manufacturing of this vehicle from Italy to Slovakia, Poland, or wherever it was, would save them €10,000 per car. And I found that an absolutely staggering figure, that out of a car that must cost £20,000 or £30,000 to make, probably half of that is manual labour, paying someone to do something. Probably a quarter of it is the battery pack. That's the most expensive component in it. The rest of the car is absolutely really quite cheap. So what we have is, if Fiat decide to move this production from Italy to this Eastern European country and save €10,000 per car, have a guess how much they're going to save if you can actually get a Optimus robot to take over from that manual worker. It's got to be more than 10,000. They save 10,000 by paying the person in Eastern Europe less, but they're still having to pay him something. So I can picture the scene whereby if you could get an Optimus robot to do everything that a human auto worker does at the moment, you're going to save well in excess of €10,000, pounds or dollars per car. And that's a massive saving. So Boston Dynamics recently, they've scrapped their old robot, the one you saw dancing. Very impressive, but it started at $300,000 and went up to $500,000. Even Spot the Dog, that one is $75,000. These are not cheap robots. What Tesla is talking about launching is the Optimus robot, and he has said, can't guarantee it's going to happen, but he's said that's going to be cheaper than a car. Well, cars typically £20,000, £30,000, £40,000. So if an Optimus robot is that cheap, let's call it £40,000, euros, dollars, whatever. Then one robot would be paid for if you replace one worker over 4 years. So that's a payback of 4 years, which is in business is absolutely staggering. But it's not just that. You see, a human worker, even the best worker in the world, only works an 8-hour day, maybe 9 or 10 hours if you work for Elon, but it is a limited number of hours in a day. So to have a robot just work 8 or 10 hours in a day and then plug in and just sit there overnight charging, that's ludicrous. What will happen is one robot costing €40,000, dollars or pounds will actually do the work of 3 human workers, mixing up humanoid and human. So it means that the payback now is just over a year. You buy one robot, and during the day, let's say you're working a single shift in a factory, an 8-hour shift, and the factory shuts down overnight. So that robot will do one shift during the day for 8 hours. It replaces a human, payback in 4 years, everything's fine. But when the factory closes, what can it do? What it can do is now go around the factory with a broom and a duster, and it can clean. And that replaces a cleaner. So you've got more savings. And what can it do then? Because it's not going to spend the whole night cleaning. What it can do then is maybe go down into the stock area and start doing stock checks and moving stuff around and getting it into the right location, so that when they start work the next day, the production line is all lined up, ready to go. So this robot might have 3 totally different functions. It might be a production worker during the day, it might be a cleaner at night, and then over in early hours of the morning, it might just go into the stock room and do stock control or moving stuff about. That brings the cost down to the payback down to just over a year. So this suddenly becomes a no-brainer. Now, in addition to that, the human worker, they want holidays. They want sick pay. They get ill. They want this. They want that. The boss, the company, has to pay national insurance to the government for employing that person. And they have to pay sick benefits and pensions and whatever else they have to do. So all of a sudden, if anyone can make a robot, a humanoid robot, 5 fingers, 5 toes, legs, arms, head, cameras, everything, that can replace the work that a human does, that is going to dramatically reduce the cost. So you buy one of these for $40,000. At the end of the first year, it's had 3 jobs. It's paid for. That's now a free robot. And people say, oh yeah, they've got to charge. Well, of course they have to charge themselves up. However, if this goes into the cleaning area and is doing some cleaning, it can plug in on a flex while it's hoovering up, or whatever it does. Or if it's in the stock room, it can plug in while it's sorting out the stock and doing the tally and everything else. And some of the tasks in a factory, from what I've seen, the workers stand alongside a production line or some sort of moving component, and they are relatively static. They may move 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 feet, but you could have a coiled cable coming down from the ceiling into the robot, and it can probably be constantly on charge. Speed up the process. They've been around for years. Other things, the robots, they have a gun now that's got 5 socket bits on it, so when you put a wheel on, this goes and all 5 tighten up simultaneously, so no more individually tightening them up. So these have been going on for a long time, and if you look in any factory nowadays, there are very, very few workers, an awful lot of robots of one sort or another. If you look into the paint booth, that's all robotic now. It's an arm, see them covered in plastic to protect them from the paint, and they now dip them automatically. They now, when it's dry, they spray them automatically, and it's only when they come out of the other end of the paint booth that a human goes along and has a look, and they wear very thin gloves and they feel imperfections, they look for imperfections. That's all the human involvement nowadays. Everything else now has been roboticized, if that's a word. There's a very, very, very compelling business argument for getting rid of all the rest of the human labour and just going for robotics. It's not possible at the moment, but they are all working towards it. So it's quite possible that Elon, getting rid of all these people, has suddenly thought, well, we've actually got a robot already. Let's just speed up the development of it, the software of it, and let's start using it. So, for example, let's use it for cleaning overnight. It can operate a hoover, and that could save us the money of a cleaner. And while we're working on developing it and making it better, it can actually be doing something useful and saving money based on the price. And then as it can get more tasks, it just does more things. So I actually see that a lot of the people who've been let go are probably never going to be never going to be replaced. And this also raises now questions about where are we going, because if these car factories around the world, ultimately, it's not going to happen in a few months or years, but ultimately they all go over to these robots because it's the only way you can make something cheap enough to be able to sell it at a sensible price against your competition, then these have always been traditional massive employers. In the 60s, 70s, you know, the Fords and the Vauxhalls, massive employers in the UK. Nowadays, the number of people working there, it's still quite sizable, very much less than it was, but still very sizable. What would happen when you can get rid of all of them and just have a bank of robots all plugged in, waiting to go, and as soon as the production line starts up, they all dive in, and they'll be more efficient, they'll be more reliable than a human. Human can let his attention wander if something's gone wrong that day or night and make a mistake. If you've got a robot, they tend to either get it right or it doesn't work at all. So if you're trying to screw a wheel onto a car, it either goes on or it doesn't. Whereas humans can get it half on and have a potential vehicle recall later. So I think behind the scenes there's an awful lot going on, and this is going to head towards the utopian vision that I'm sure some people have, where you literally just feed in sheets of metal at one end and inside it's all sealed. You don't have any human workers, you don't need lights, you don't need heating, you don't need a canteen or toilets, anything like that. You feed metal and materials in one end and out the other end comes finished cars. We're heading that way, but where does that leave us humans? Okay, like your comments on this one. This could really, really be quite interesting. What is our role if the robots are taking over everything? More importantly, how are we going to earn our money? So thanks very much for watching. I'm Dave.